Hello. It's Twanna Carter, career and anxiety coach here. And I came on today just a few minutes to talk about stress and overwhelm with the pandemic that may be happening with you. I am an anxiety and career coach, a resilience coach, and I coach professional women who are fed up with their anxiety holding them back, and what they're wanting to do is manage that stress and that doubt to stay focused during the pandemic to get done what they need to get done, right? So, as I said before, if you read that lead in, you know what? We all handle stress differently. Let's just face it. Some people have a stiff upper lip and then you can never tell they're bothered. It's like you never see them sweat and you just kind of wonder what's going on. There are those of us who you see a sweat all the time, right? You know when somebody is stressed because you can just feel it or you can see it. So how we react is really differently. And whatever kind of way that you react to stress, the thing is understand that there are things that you can do to manage it. And that's the most important piece, right? Because if you don't manage the stress, it can make you anxious. And if you already have anxiety, this whole pandemic thing can really make it worse, right? Let's just face it. Raise your hand if someone taught you during school how to manage in a pandemic. Most of us didn't get that training. So it's just, realistically, we're going to just behave and react in different ways. Some of us, like I said, stiff upper lip. Some of us just want to curl up in that ball, pull the cover over our heads and just say, call me when this whole thing is over. And it's just, we feel it in different ways. And that's okay. That's okay. We're just all different. The thing is, again, is to understand that there is a way to manage it. And so that's what I want to talk to you today. Talk to you about some of the signs and symptoms, and then what you can do to manage it if you're feeling that way, right? And so the one thing that you do need to understand is that if you are already predisposed to like anxiety, depression, or any other type of mental illness, then it just means you may have to take a little bit more care and be a little bit more aware of how you're responding to the pandemic. Oh, if I can say that right, the pandemic and what's going on around you. Okay. So there are some red flags that if you start seeing these symptoms, feeling this way, behaving this way, having some of the physical symptoms, then it's time to be aware and take some steps to manage it, right? And so I've just got a few notes over here to be sure I don't forget anything. So number one is just feeling so stressed that you're overwhelmed that you can't think. Is that I can't make a decision, especially if you've been the type of person who pretty much makes a decision. You call the shots in your family, or you have a significant other and you pretty much call the shots. If you are so overwhelmed and stressed that you really can't make a decision, that's a red flag, right? And if you are so stressed and so worried that you're profusely perspiring, you could also, there are some physical symptoms like diarrhea. If it's bad enough, you can actually get diarrhea. Others is that palpitation of the heart, and sometimes it's like an anxiety attack. You feel like you're just going to have a heart attack. And I've known some people that felt like, there was a pain, felt like the pain was going down the arm, and it actually felt like a heart attack. So these are some of the extreme symptoms that these are red flags, like your body is giving you warning signs. It's kind of giving you a map, and it just is trying to lead you in the right direction. Okay. And so there are steps that you can take. Some of the other things that you may notice is that you can't sleep, right? You can't sleep. And in some cases, you may sleep too much. It can be either or, right? If you find yourself consistently up at nighttime, and just staring at the wall, staring at the TV, you're staring at the phone, that might be a warning sign that, yeah, you may be having some extreme, you know, stress and anxiety, right? And some of the other symptoms, it's just really easy to fly off the handle with people. And again, especially if you're kind of even keel, this is something you don't normally do, but you're like easily frustrated, you're easily angered. It's just things that make you angry, or you just fly off the handle and just, whew, it's like kaboom, split second. The least little thing is kaboom, right? some more signs and symptoms, especially if you have kids or significant other, and this is just not your normal. You don't normally do this. That means that you may be struggling. So these are some symptoms that I want you to look for so you can take a step back and say, oh, you know what? This may be prolonged stress that's causing my anxiety to rise, and then figure out what steps you need to take, right? And so, and sometimes it's just this restlessness, agitation. You just can't put your finger on it. You just feel antsy, like something's going to happen, something's going to happen, something's going to happen. You're like looking over your shoulder, waiting for something to happen. Again, these are all some signs and symptoms that you may need to take additional steps to manage your anxiety, to lower your stress and manage your anxiety, right? And so when we talk about stress, understand that there are different types of stress, right? So there's a eustress that's actually like a good stress. For instance, if this thing was over with, a lot of people are going to experience eustress, pack a bag, go on vacation, whatever. That's a good kind of stress, right? But then there's this acute stress. It's like just there all the time. When you're in acute stress, that's when your body reacts. It may go into fight or flight. In fight or flight, we produce chemicals, cortisol, we produce adrenaline. Those chemicals are only made to is fight or flight, right? And sometimes freeze. But those chemicals are there just for a short time. They're there to get you through whatever danger it is, and then you come out of fight or flight and they're supposed to go away. But what happens in acute stress, in long-term stress, right? They stay there because you're consistently under stress. You're consistently in fight or flight. Those chemicals break the body down. They make it harder for your immune system to do what it's supposed to do. They make it more difficult for you to manage your emotions. You may be easily frustrated. You may be easily angered. Hey, Janet. And you may be a lot easier to your anxiety to be triggered and you're like more anxious. So those are just some of the warning signs that you may feel, right? So how do you handle that when it happens? Like, or you're like, I'm all of that. I'm all of that probably times 10. What do I do? So the first thing that you need to do is just understand reality is reality, right? You feel what you feel. Your feelings are true. It's just you feel what you feel. Acknowledge that, understand that, oh my God, I'm really anxious right now. I'm really scared right now. I'm really tired, really frustrated. Whatever it is you're feeling, acknowledge it. Just live with it for a moment there. Acknowledge that you feel what you feel, right? And I like to tell my clients that you feel what you feel. Now, the data that you're basing your feeling on, it may or may not be true. No, we don't like to hear that. But yes, what you feel is true. It's always true, right? You collect some kind of type of data, you think some way about it, and then you feel some kind of way about it. And then those feelings, based on those feelings, you respond or you react in a certain way. Feelings, true. Feelings, true. How you react based on the feelings, yeah, you react a certain way is true. The thoughts that you have about that data you got may not always be quite true, right? And so there is where you have some management in this whole thing, because you get to look at the data that that's coming your way and what you're collecting. You kind of get to think about it. Is that really what I'm feeling? Is that really what I'm thinking? Is that really what's going on? You have some leeway in there to manage it, right? And so again, I'm going to look at my notes because I like to get ahead of myself. But understand that your feelings won't last. The way you feel, it won't last like forever. Frustration won't last forever. Anxiety, anger, fear, doubt, they don't last forever. So sometimes you really do have to tell yourself, because in the moment you may be so full and anxious and afraid, it seems like it's going to last forever. But it doesn't. It comes, feelings come and they go. They may switch places. They may be back later on to visit you, but they don't last forever. And you have to acknowledge that, right? Be compassionate with yourself. And I mean, really be compassionate with yourself. Beating yourself up with criticism and judgment will not help you in this situation. It will just make you more anxious. So you really do have to practice compassion. Well, how do I do that? You can try prayer. You can try meditation, right? You can try mindfulness. Those things will help you to have self-compassionate. Again, you feel what you feel based on a pandemic. Again, none of us were trained as kids. Like when you're in school, I want you to know this is how you handle pandemics and it's going to happen in your lifetime and this is what you need to do. Most of us didn't get that. I know I didn't. You get that? I did not. So be compassionate with yourself and understand this is different. For a lot of us, this is different. We've never gone through anything like this before, right? And you got a lot of people out there, you got the class of 2020 in high school not graduating. They're not having a ceremony. You have college graduates not having a ceremony. There's no prom. There's a lot of things that didn't happen that we expected to happen. This is different. This is so different, right? Now you have a few people that went through this, but let's face it, they were 1, 2, or 3 years old in that Spanish flu of 1918 or whatever. They were young. So for most of us, it's our first time going through this. So there's like no just step by step way to, like, if you just follow these 3, 4, 5 steps, you'll be perfect and everything will be fine. No, some days you'll be messed up. Some days will be kind of messy. Some days you feel good. You just roll with the flow, however you're feeling. Okay. And so, understand that the number one thing that happens when you have anxiety is this whole situation. It's like a huge question mark. Everybody wants to know the same question. When are we going to be safe to open, right? When are we going to be safe and we don't have to worry about catching COVID-19? When am I going to get back to my job? Am I going to go back to a job? When are the grocery stores going to be normal? When is it going to be another normal? These are all questions that we want answers to. The human brain doesn't like unanswered questions. And for some of us that are predisposed to anxiety, unanswered questions make us that much more anxious. It is tough to deal with, right? And as you start to look at all the questions, you can start to feel like you're unraveling and getting overwhelmed because there's just way too many questions with no answers. And we like answers to our questions, right? So one of the things you need to understand is, no, the brain doesn't like unanswered questions, but how do you handle that? You need to find the things that you can answer, for which you can answer the questions. In other words, find that which you control, right? You got to figure out what you control. When you're going back to work, you may not know that now. But when can I fix breakfast? That's an answerable question. You can fix breakfast at 6 in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning. That's an answerable question that you pretty much have control over, right? When I got to report to work. Well, when you got to report to work if you're teleworking, right? Does your supervisor say you got to sign on at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, or whatever that is, right? You know what time to take a break. You have control over what time you want to do a break. You have control over, basically what you do on that break. Do you take your dog for a walk, right? Do you take your kids for a walk? Do you go walking with your significant other? Is that the break? Do you call a friend on the phone and chit chat and talk? Do you FaceTime? You have control over decisions like that. So it's about finding the things that you do actually control and then hold on to that and control those things, right? Other things that you have control over, and it's really important, is especially for those of you who are teleworking, because most of us are used to getting up in the morning, we go through our routines, we get in a car, we hop on Metro and we go to work. Well, that routine for many of us has been washed away. So what do you have control over, right? You can get up, you can still get up every morning. You can brush your teeth and wash your face, comb your hair. It could be optional, but you may want to comb the hair too, right? Put on clothes, and then you really do feel better. I promise you, you do feel better when you do all those things. Eat breakfast routinely, whether you eat at 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatever time you eat breakfast routinely. Hey, Katrina, thanks for popping in. Thank you. And so, the other things you have control over: what time you pray, how long you pray, when you meditate, when you practice mindfulness. You actually have control over all those things. And during this time, hi Jasmine, I told you about being self-compassionate, right? Be compassionate. Be realistic about what you're going to accomplish also. Now, I know me, I'm list driven, and I will have a list a mile long every day of my life, right? And expect to get all of it done. And if I don't, then I start feeling some kind of way. So you have to take a step back and be realistic about how much you can get accomplished in a day until you get back on track. That is fine. Don't beat yourself up, but don't make a list of 50 things, understanding that you may be only able to do 5. Practice self compassion and do what you can, right? And also, for those of you who are teleworking at home, I do encourage people, if you're able to, take leave. I know you're going to be sitting at the house for the most part, but you can still take leave and take a break. So Katrina says, "Hi, yes, my sister's here too. Um, is it Taniqua? Is that correct? Let me know if I'm pronouncing that correct. And welcome. I can say Miss Johnson, Miss Jackson if you're nasty. I can say, hey, Miss Johnson, and welcome, right? But definitely, if you can take leave, even if it's only half a day, take leave, relax, walk outside, play with your kids, play games. My sorority sisters and I, a couple of weeks ago, we all hopped on Zoom and we played a game long distance because we were all in different places, but we hopped on and played a game. You can do that. Families are now Zooming, doing the Zoom and meeting face to face and chit chatting. Those are some of the things that you can do. Definitely, Katrina's laughing, right? And the other thing that is really important during this time, and I know some of us have problems with this when there's no pandemic going on. Self-care is not the same thing as being selfish. Let me say that again. Self-care is not selfish, right? One of the best things you can do is self-care because it's taking care of you. And when you practice self-care, you are more compassionate with yourself, right? So what are some of the things that you can do? It depends on where you are, when you're sheltering in place and where you can go. Now, I'm in Maryland, and so we can go out and exercise. It's one of the things that's on the safe list as long as you keep your physical distance from other people, right? And so exercise is one of the best things you can do. Getting that sunlight, getting the fresh air. If you can go to a park, right, and walk in that park, one of the best things you can do to manage stress and manage anxiety and overwhelm. In Japan, their doctors actually prescribe people to go spend time in nature. Go spend time in nature. Hello, Jasmine. Thanks for popping in. Definitely, it is so helpful. The other thing is this. Now, if you don't live near a park, you live in urban areas, you don't have a park, you can't go to nature, looking at pictures of nature counts. It is just as helpful as actually walking your dog or walking with your kids or your significant other in nature. You can pull up pictures on your smartphone or your laptop or your tablet and look at pictures of nature, just as calming, just as relaxing, just as stress reducing, right? It really does count. Now, other things that you might be able to do if you sing, even if you like, my kids love my singing. Okay, not really. That's why I'm laughing. But you can sing even if it's loud and off key. You can still sing if you play an instrument or you want to learn how to play an instrument. Great time to do that, right? It's a wonderful time and it can be part of self-care. And one of the things that you do want to avoid, and it's not self-care, is you do want to avoid self-medicating with alcohol and drugs. In the long run, they really don't help, right? That's not a form of self-care. Sorry. Now, I know that some people will get a glass of wine and type of thing. It's about being aware, always being aware of how much alcohol you are consuming and being aware when it is starting to become a problem. That's why it's not really great, to talk about self-care and always link it to alcohol or drugs because it's not helpful. Another thing that you can do to reduce stress and anxiety is turn off social media. Turn it off. When 9/11 happened, I consumed everything, every minute. I wanted every minute, every second of every day. And I was riding down the road and someone was reporting and they went to a commercial and I went to turn to another channel because I was trying to get all the possible information possible. And I looked up in the mirror and my kids' eyes were all like this. And they were just looking at me and listening to everything. And I went, oh, okay. So I had to learn to turn it off. It is okay to turn off your social media and your news and your radio and your television. Turn off for a couple of hours. I think I've watched maybe 4 newscasts in probably the last year, but I keep up with everything. You don't have to be glued to everything to keep it up, but do turn it off because it does introduce overwhelm. You get so much data, so much bad stuff, so much this that your brain is overwhelmed. Your capacity for decision making and everything that your capacity you have for the day, you really can't fill it up and you can't make a decision. You just don't feel well. Turn that stuff off for a couple of hours if you can. 3 or 4 is really, really good, but it will definitely help you, right? Now, if you're hearing all these things, but you're like, I think I'm to the nth power to this, it is okay to reach out for professional help. If you're at that point, do that. Find a counselor, find a psychologist. Now, a lot of people want to go straight to a psychiatrist. Some psychiatrists still do talk therapy. A lot of psychiatrists do not. They prescribe medication. And oftentimes, if they prescribe medication, they want you to talk to a counselor or a psychologist as they're prescribing medication. So you probably don't necessarily want to start with a psychiatrist. You can start with your primary care physician and say, hey, I'm having these issues, and see if he or she would recommend medication. Oftentimes they'll recommend talk therapy. And if your anxiety is such that you might need medication, they'll look at some medication and say talk therapy. They both go hand in hand. Now, some people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're telling people to do medication. I'm actually not. What I'm saying is you do you and what works for you. If you do medication and that's what works for you to bring your anxiety down until you're able to manage it, do the medication. If you don't do medication and you can do your stuff holistically, then that works for you, then that is what you do. I do not believe in beating people up because they do or don't take medication. Whatever works for you, works for you. Okay. And so I will say this, that if you're kind of in the middle, your anxiety and your stress is not off the chart, but you're looking for some additional help, I am actually enrolling into my Ditch Anxiety and Be Resilient program. It is a wonderful program that's based on neuropsychology, and the program helps you to build resilience so that you're able to manage anxiety, you're able to manage overwhelm, and you're able to manage overload, in addition to looking at your vision and being sure that you're goal focused, that you have something to focus on. In addition to, it also helps you to manage your networks and understand the people that you have around you, be able to figure out which ones are helpful and healthy to you and which ones maybe not so much. Because if it's maybe not so much, you may want to make your tracks around that person smaller, those people small, until you have a handle on managing your anxiety, right? And so if you are interested in that, I have a link there. Go ahead and click the link. You can go out and read about the program. And pretty much from there, if you're interested, send me a message. We get on the phone. We hop on the phone. If it's a good fit for you and you're ready to start, I go ahead and I get you enrolled. Katrina says, my psychologist is no longer taking my calls. I guess she wasn't ready for my level of anxiety. Let's just hope she just got full, Katrina. Hopefully there was an excuse. There's a reason for that. But again, if you're looking for a program, and the thing about this program, it is a group coaching program, because I understand that people are isolated and that is ticking up anxiety and stress. This is a group program, but it will only ever be 4 to 8 ladies because, well, I'm an introvert and I just like smaller groups. So it'll be a group of 4 to 8 other ladies. You'll do your virtual coaching program, and then we get online as well in a group session. And then we Katrina's laughing. I do group coaching with you in the group, and that's another reason why I keep it small, because I do the laser focus coaching with each of you, and we meet twice a month for that, and then you have your coaching otherwise. So it's a really great program. You do an assessment up front. It will give you the 6-page report that tells you what your resilience level is, and it will give you each of the building blocks of resilience. It'll tell you what your score is. You go through the program, and then at the end of the program, you retake an assessment, and it will give you another report, and you will actually be able to see your progress. You don't have to guess at it. Now, typically clients tell me about 2 to 3 weeks they can see the difference or feel the difference after starting the coaching program. So you'll feel the difference all along. But at the end, that's why I love this program, is because you do the assessment again, and you look at your 2 reports and you can actually see your numbers increase because you're able to manage your anxiety, manage your emotions. Now, we talk about anxiety because I'm an anxiety coach, but there are other emotions that you actually learn to manage as well. So if you're interested in that and you're looking to do it in a group session with the other group of ladies who is in the same position, trying to manage that anxiety, stay focused and do what you need to do, ditch the anxiety and be resilient, is there for you. Thanks, ladies, I'm going to zoom down here. I'm going to let me check to be sure I didn't have any questions. Sometimes Facebook will let me know when people ask questions, and sometimes I don't see the questions until I am off. So let me check that site and let me go over and check my page. So I don't have any questions. Does anybody else out there have any questions? Because if you don't have any more questions, I am going to go ahead and sign off. For those of you who catch me on a replay, as always, thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate that for joining me, and I appreciate all the ladies and your comments and your humor. And I didn't say that, but humor is such a great way to reduce stress and manage anxiety. It is one of the ones that I certainly picked up. I have social anxiety, and those of you who know my story, you know that I didn't figure out that I had social anxiety until I was almost 40. It just kind of wreaked havoc in different parts of my life. And one of the things that I learned to do was to be, to be funny. Either I look at, comedy shows that are funny, or, I talk and I laugh and I tell funny stories. And that's a way that helps me to manage anxiety. So there's a lot of different things you can do, ladies. And, Katrina says, thank you for your wisdom. Well, thank you for joining in, Katrina, and keeping me smiling and laughing. I love your comments. Well, everybody, that's what I have for you tonight. Those are my motivational nuggets. Take care and be in touch soon. Bye-bye.